Good morning, my name is Lizzy. I'm the rector of St George's, and today we are coming to the end of our series looking at the New Testament book of Philippians. Those of you who have been tuning in over the last few weeks will know some of the context, but let me recap briefly. This is a letter written by the Apostle Paul. Paul was something of a human dynamo. He planted several churches, including the one at Philippi, and he had all sorts of adventures as he preached the gospel. He saw miracles and experienced many hardships. Paul was someone who believed in hard work. He mentions that in several of his other letters, and we know that he sometimes worked as a tent maker. But now, his situation has changed. For Paul, it's not a general lockdown that means he has to stay at home. He's under house arrest, awaiting trial for speaking about Jesus. But just as we do, he uses the technology at his disposal to keep in touch with his friends. He doesn't have Zoom. He doesn't have email or social media. He doesn't have a phone, and he doesn't even have a postal service. But he does have a friend who acts as a messenger. When the church at Philippi hears that Paul has been imprisoned, they send a man called Epaphroditus with some money to support Paul. Now Epaphroditus is returning home and taking this letter from Paul back to the church at Philippi. In the second half of chapter 4, the part that Elsie read for us from verse 10 onwards, we see Paul thanking the Philippians for their gift to him. In verse 10 he says, "I rejoiced greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me." And verse 14, "It was good of you to share in my troubles." But it's a slightly strange thank you. I don't know how you write thank you cards, but in places, Paul seems to suggest that he didn't really want the gift. In verse 17, he says, "Not that I desire your gifts. What I desire is that more may be credited to your account." What's going on? Well, it seems that Paul is concerned to make sure that the Philippians don't get the wrong idea on two counts. First, he doesn't want them to think that he complains or blames God if life isn't comfortable. Paul has, of course, faced all sorts of discomfort, hardship, and danger for the sake of the gospel. And he tells us here, the secret of being content in all circumstances is not to look for resources inside ourselves, but to look to God. Verse 13, "I can do all this through him who gives me strength." Do you need to hear that today? Secondly, he doesn't want the Philippians to think he's in ministry for the money. At the time, there were teachers and philosophers who went around selling the latest ideas, many of whom were regarded as crooks or cheats. That's not what Paul is doing. He offers the gospel as a free gift from God, and where he can, he works to support himself. But now Paul's circumstances have changed. He does need help. And when we read carefully, we see he is grateful to his friends, his church, for their gift. I'm aware some of you might be in a similar position to Paul. Maybe you've lost your job or your income has drastically reduced due to lockdown. That's why we have a financial support fund at St George's, so those of us who have enough can help those who don't. If you want to find out more, please look at our website. Philippians is a thank you letter from Paul to his friends at Philippi. But of course, that's not all it is. Paul takes the opportunity of a messenger to teach the church at Philippi. And as we read his letter, we can hear God speaking through it to us. Today I want us to focus on verses 6 to 8, which I think are particularly relevant. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, or praiseworthy, think about such things. Now, I imagine the reason Paul tells the Philippians not to be anxious is because they had plenty to be anxious about. And that's certainly the case for us. Perhaps you're anxious about health and safety, or about how friends and family are coping with being apart. Maybe you're worried about the economy or your job security and personal finances. Or perhaps you're anxious about all the future unknowns. What will a new normal be like? How long will it go on? How will we adjust? It's easy to get overwhelmed by anxiety. If you're struggling, please talk to someone, whether that's a friend or a pastor or your GP. We all need help from time to time. Here in Philippians 4, Paul shows us 3 steps to help us find peace. Firstly, present your requests to God. This means when we start to feel anxious, we acknowledge and name it. And instead of letting that anxious thought take root in our hearts and minds, we bring it to God in prayer. The very act of doing that acknowledges a bigger picture. Whatever we're facing, we are not alone. We have a God who loves us. Jesus died for us. We can trust him to work for good in the midst of all things. Bishop Graham Tomlin says that presenting our requests to God is a bit like a doorstep delivery. I wonder if you've received any deliveries in the last few weeks. One of our best was some homemade hot cross buns from a kind neighbour. And last week, rather excitingly, we had an online supermarket delivery. We never used to gather as a family to thank God for our supermarket deliveries, but we did this time. These days, deliveries are put on the doorstep. The person rings the doorbell and then steps right back. They don't stay there touching the parcel, breathing over it. Our neighbour was halfway down the drive before we even got to the front door. Perhaps that could be a picture for us of how to present our requests to God. We could do a sort of doorstep delivery of all our anxieties. Deliver them to God, step back from them, and leave them with him. So that's the first step. Present your requests to God. Secondly, be thankful. At the moment, life has been stripped right back, and it's okay to find that hard. But finding it hard can lead to constant grumbling and complaining. Or we can choose to be thankful for what we have, including small things. As I've thought about this, I've been struck that it's often people in the toughest situations who are the best at being thankful. Catholic Cardinal Luis Tagle from the Philippines, who is the president of Caritas Internationalis, an organisation that works with some of the poorest communities in the world, put it like this: people who have suffered know how to smile. In March, Jess Soanes, one of our 1830 congregations, spoke really well at Squad Preach about having an attitude of gratitude. You can find it and all our recent talks on our website. What Jess didn't say was that she had just been in hospital for 10 days, very unwell. In fact, she hadn't actually been discharged when she preached. She was feeling much better and asked if she could leave hospital for a couple of hours to go to church. She didn't tell them that she was the preacher until she got back. Jess came from a difficult time in hospital and showed us how to have an attitude of gratitude. Some people like to reflect at the end of each day, looking back to spot signs of God at work and to find things to be thankful for. It doesn't take away the hard things, but it does help us to remember that they're not the whole story. We have a God who loves us. He is with us and for us. So, present your request to God, be thankful. Thirdly, fill your mind with good things. A healthy diet helps our bodies to be healthy. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty if you've taken up lockdown baking. My point is that just as what we eat affects our bodies, so what we read and listen to and watch impacts our minds. We need to watch what we watch. On the one hand, that means turning off things that aren't helpful. Social media is great for staying connected, but we all need times when we turn our devices off. And if the news is making you feel stressed, turn off the alerts. Just check in occasionally. On the other hand, it also means turning on things that are helpful. You might want to read a good book or watch your favourite show on Netflix, and that is fine. I've been enjoying reading Mallory Towers with my girls. But let's not miss an opportunity. Could this be a time when we choose to fill our minds with the Bible? Could this be a time to press into God in prayer and worship, filling our minds with God? I've been thinking about the northern saints of the 7th century who were known for combining monasticism and mission. Many withdrew into solitude to pray for extended periods. And when they emerged, they changed the north of England, bringing many people to faith in Jesus. St. Aidan chose Holy Island at Lindisfarne as his mission centre. When the tide rises, it's cut off from the mainland. That's a time for prayer, alone with God in the secret place. When the tide goes down, they're connected. Time for mission. Now, I know some people, especially key workers, are busy working. And some people are here looking for God. If that is you, I would love to invite you to join us for Alpha Online. You can sign up on our website and get started this week. But for some of us, right now might be the best opportunity of our lives to pray. And Thy Kingdom Come, a global prayer movement, starts on Thursday. Could you be part of that? I want to encourage everyone to pray more during Thy Kingdom Come. Don't compare yourself to others. Just pray more than you have been. Could you pray more, maybe on your own, or by connecting with a friend, or joining in our 24/7 prayer? Let's watch what we watch, turning off unhelpful things, turning on helpful things. And let's fill our minds with good things, especially God. So, the 3 steps are 1, present your request to God. 2, be thankful. 3, fill your minds with good things. If we do that, Paul says the peace of God, which is beyond understanding, will guard our hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. The peace of God is not a superficial thing. It's not about having everything sorted, nothing to be anxious about. It's more like a deep ocean current. There might be a storm raging on the surface, but deep down, there's peace. It's a gift that flows from our relationship with God. And these 3 steps we've been looking at help us to access it.